Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. The man accused of hitting two people and dragging a woman several miles in a Fond du Lac County drunk driving crash will continue to be held on a $250,000 cash bond.
19-year-old Yatziel Encarnacion of West Bend was back in court today, now facing a count of hit and run causing great bodily harm. Investigators say everyone involved in the incident had just left a underage drinking party. In a First Alert update, Jason Zimmerman explains why more charges could be coming.
With Yatziel Encarnacion appearing in Fond du Lac County Court for the second time. We're also learning new details leading up to the New Year's Eve crash on Highway 45 in the town of Auburn, with the defense referring to the incident as a tragic accident.
This was not only an accident, so not a person going out seeking to engage in criminal activity. It was an accident that was already ongoing at the time of the defendant's arrival.
According to investigators, 19-year-old Taya Grimes of Hartford crashed her car, ejecting herself and several passengers. Just after that, a second car came by, driven by the defendant, who struck both Grimes and another unidentified victim laying in the road. While Grimes was already dead from the initial crash and then dragged 3 miles by the defendant's car, the other victim, who was struck in the head, was alive and suffered severe injuries. The DA says he can't charge for Grimes' death, but the defendant will face charges for the other victim, which include hit and run causing great bodily harm.
I'm not going to talk about this particular case, but as prosecutors, we have to be able to prove our cases beyond a reasonable doubt. And when you have injuries that may occur, if you can't prove when those injuries may have happened, or if the evidence suggests it may have occurred before something, that becomes difficult to try to tell a jury that they should find somebody guilty beyond a reasonable doubt based on those circumstances.
While the defendant went home the night of the crash, he would later turn himself in to police in West Bend. And over the course of the investigation, admitted he struck an object in the road at the scene of the crash and described it as like going over a speed bump quickly. We also asked the DA about potential charges against the person who supplied the alcohol for the underage drinking party, a 21-year-old man also involved in the crash.
I'm sure there are a lot of questions about where alcohol may have come from, where it may have been consumed, things of that nature. There may be other investigations that are ongoing related to that. I don't have any comments as to any of that investigation at this time.
If convicted, the defendant faces up to 15 years behind bars and a fine of $50,000. He's due back in court on January 25th for a preliminary hearing. Reporting in Fond du Lac, Jason Zimmerman, Action 2 News.